William stood at the kitchen window of their modest apartment, watching the morning sun paint golden streaks across the city skyline. His coffee had gone cold in his hands, but he barely noticed. The letter from the medical center sat unopened. On the kitchen table behind him, its crisp white envelope seeming to mock him with its silence. He had been staring at it for nearly an hour, unable to find the courage to tear it open. Kate was still sleeping in their bedroom down the hall. She had been so tired lately, more tired than usual, and the worry lines around her eyes had deepened over the past few weeks. William had noticed how she would pause sometimes while climbing the stairs, placing her hand on her chest as if trying to catch her breath. When he asked her about it, she would smile and brush it off, saying she had just been working too hard at her job at the local library, but William knew Kate better than anyone. They had been together for 8 years, married for 3, and he could read her like his favorite book. She was scared. He was scared too, but he was trying to be strong. For both of them, the appointment 3 weeks ago had started as a routine checkup. Kate had been feeling unusually tired and had been having some chest pains that worried her enough to finally make an appointment with Dr. Martinez. William remembered sitting in that sterile waiting room, flipping through old magazines while Kate filled out paperwork. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the smell of disinfectant made his stomach turn. Kate had squeezed his hand when her name was called, and he had wanted to go with her, but she insisted she would be fine. On her own. That was Kate, always trying to handle everything herself, always putting on a brave face. When she came out 40 minutes later, her face was pale and her hands were shaking slightly. Dr. Martinez had ordered some tests, she explained as they walked to the car. Blood work, some scans, nothing too serious, just to rule out a few things. But William had seen the fear in her eyes. The way she gripped the car door handle a little too tightly as they drove home in silence. The waiting had been the worst part. 3 weeks of pretending everything was normal while both of them worried about what the tests might reveal. Kate had thrown herself into her work at the library, staying late to organize the children's reading program and helping elderly patrons find books about gardening and cooking. William had watched her from across their small living room in the second evenings, seeing how she would absently place her hand over her heart. When she thought he wasn't looking, William had tried to stay busy too. His job at the construction company kept his hands occupied during the day, but his mind wandered constantly. His co-workers had started asking if he was feeling all right because he had been so quiet lately. His best friend Jake had invited him out for drinks twice, but William had declined both times. He didn't want to be away from Kate, and he certainly didn't want to talk about what might be wrong. The nights had been the hardest. They would lie in bed together, Kate's head resting on his chest, and he could feel how tense she was. Her breathing was sometimes shallow, and she would toss and turn until the early hours of the morning. William would lie there listening to her restless movements, his own heart racing with worry. He had caught her crying in the shower one morning, the sound of her quiet sobs mixing with the running water. When she came out, she smiled at him and asked what he wanted for breakfast, as if nothing had happened. Their families had no idea what was going on. Kate's mother called every Sunday like clockwork, chatting about her garden and the latest neighborhood gossip. William's parents lived 2 hours away and visited once a month, always bringing Kate flowers from their garden and asking when they might expect grandchildren. Both William and Kate had become expert at deflecting questions and changing the subject when conversations got too personal. The envelope on the table seemed to grow larger every time William glanced at it. He had picked it up from the mailbox yesterday evening, recognizing the return address immediately. Kate had been at the grocery store, and William had stood in their small entryway, turning the envelope over in his hands. Were typed neatly on the front, along with their address in the font that medical offices always seem to use. He had hidden the letter in his jacket pocket when Kate returned with bags of groceries, helping her put away milk and bread while the envelope seemed to burn against his chest. They had made dinner together, Kate humming softly while she chopped vegetables, and William had marveled at how normal she could seem when he knew she was just as worried as he was. Now, in the quiet of the morning, William knew he couldn't wait any longer. Kate would be awake soon, and they would have to face whatever news the letter contained together. He had promised her on their wedding day that they would face everything as a team, He meant to keep that promise no matter what the next few hours might bring. The apartment was silent except for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional chirp of birds outside their window. William took a deep breath, set his cold coffee on the counter, and walked slowly toward the kitchen table. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the envelope, knowing that once he opened it, their lives might never be the same again. But he also knew that whatever the letter said, they would face it together. Just as they had faced everything else in their 8 years together. Kate's alarm clock would ring in 15 minutes, and she would wake up with that same worried expression she had worn to bed every night for the past 3 weeks. But this morning would be different. This morning, they would finally have answers. And William was determined to be strong enough for both of them, no matter what those answers might be. The sound of Kate's footsteps in the hallway made William's heart race faster than it already was. He had been standing at the kitchen table for what felt like hours, the unopened envelope still in his trembling hands. Kate appeared in the doorway, wearing her favorite blue pajamas, her hair messy from sleep, and that same worried expression she had worn for weeks now painted across her face. "Good morning," she said softly, but her eyes immediately went to the envelope in William's hands. She recognized the return address instantly, and William watched as her face went pale. "Is that from Dr. Martinez's office?" she asked, her voice. Barely above a whisper, William nodded, unable to find his voice. Kate walked slowly toward him, her bare feet silent on the cold kitchen floor. She stopped just inches away from him, and he could see the fear in her eyes that she had been trying so hard to hide. "How long have you been standing here?" she asked, reaching out to touch his arm gently. "Since 6 this morning," William admitted. "I picked it up from the mailbox yesterday, but I couldn't open it without you." Kate's eyes filled with tears that she quickly blinked away. She had always been the stronger one between them, the one who held everything together when things got difficult. But William could see that her strength was wearing thin. "We should open it," Kate said, but her voice shook as she spoke. "We can't keep living like this, wondering and worrying about what might be wrong." William looked down at the envelope again. It seemed so small and insignificant, just a piece of paper in a white envelope, but he knew it contained information that could change their entire future. They sat down together at their small kitchen table. It's the same table where they had eaten breakfast every morning for the past 3 years. Kate's hands were shaking as she reached for William's free hand. Interlacing their fingers, "Whatever it says, we'll deal with it together," she said, repeating the words she had said so many times over the past few weeks. William carefully tore open the envelope, his hands steady despite the fear coursing through his body. Inside was a single sheet of paper with Dr. Martinez's letterhead at the top. The typed words seemed to blur together as William tried to focus on what the letter was saying. Kate leaned closer, reading over his shoulder, her breath warm against his cheek. The letter was formal and medical, filled with terms that neither of them fully understood, but the important parts were clear enough. The tests had shown some irregularities that needed further investigation. Dr. Martinez wanted to schedule additional tests and a consultation with a specialist. The letter mentioned words like cardiac, irregularities, and further evaluation needed. That made both of their hearts sink. Kate was the first to speak after they finished reading. "It's not a definitive diagnosis," she said, her voice stronger than William had expected. "He's just saying they need to do more tests to figure out what's going on." William nodded, but he could see the fear in her eyes that matched his own. "We need to call his office," William said, looking at the clock on the wall. It was barely 8 in the morning, but the letter had said to call as soon as possible to schedule the follow-up appointments. Kate stood up from the table, her movements careful and deliberate, and walked to the phone hanging on the kitchen wall. William watched as she dialed the number, her fingers steady despite everything they had just learned. She spoke to the receptionist in a calm, clear voice, explaining that they had received the letter and needed to schedule the recommended appointments. William could only hear Kate's side of the conversation, but he could tell from her expression that the appointments would be soon. "Next Tuesday at 2 in the afternoon, Kate said after hanging up the phone. "Dr. Martinez wants to see us together to discuss the results and explain what the next steps will be." William felt a mix of relief and anxiety wash over him. Relief that they would have answers soon, but anxiety about what those answers might be. The rest of the morning passed in a strange blur of normal activities that felt anything but normal. Kate made them both breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, but neither of them had much appetite. They sat at the table pushing food around their plates, both lost in their own thoughts about what the next few days might bring. William had to go to work, but he didn't want to leave Kate alone. She insisted she would be fine, that she had a full day planned at the library, and that staying busy would help keep her mind off things. But William could see the worry in her eyes, the way she kept touching her chest absently as if checking to make sure her heart was still beating normally. "I'll pick you up from work tonight," William said as he gathered his lunch and work clothes. "We can stop by the grocery store and get something special for dinner." Kate smiled at him, the first genuine smile he had seen from her in weeks. "Like that?" she said, walking him to the door. "Maybe we can get those steaks we've been talking about buying." William kissed her forehead gently, holding her close for a moment longer than usual. He breathed in the familiar scent of her shampoo and tried to memorize the feeling of her in his arms. The drive to the construction site was quiet, William's mind racing with thoughts about the letter and what it might mean. His coworkers noticed his distraction immediately, but William brushed off their concerns with vague explanations about being tired. He threw himself into his work, using the physical labor to try to quiet his worried mind. But throughout the day, William found himself thinking about Kate. He wondered how she was doing at the library. She was managing to stay busy enough to keep her mind off the appointment next Tuesday. He thought about all the plans they had made together, the dreams they had shared, and how this news might change everything they had hoped for their future. When 5 o'clock finally arrived, William was more than ready to leave work behind. He drove straight to the library, arriving just as Kate was locking up the building. She looked tired, more tired than she had looked in the morning, but she still managed to smile when she saw him waiting in the parking lot. "How was your day?" she asked as she got into the car. But William could tell she was just being polite. Her day had probably been just as difficult as his, filled with the same worried thoughts and fears about what was to come. "Long," William answered honestly, "but it's over now, and we're together." Kate reached over and squeezed his hand as they drove toward the grocery store, both of them trying to focus on the simple task of planning dinner instead of thinking about the appointment. That waited for them next Tuesday. Tuesday morning arrived with a gray sky and light rain tapping against the windows of their apartment. William had barely slept the night before, listening to Kate toss and turn beside him. She had finally fallen asleep around 4 in the morning, her breathing shallow and uneven. He had watched her sleep, studying her face in the dim light that filtered through their bedroom curtains. Memorizing every detail as if he might lose her, Kate woke up at 7, her eyes immediately finding William's face. "You didn't sleep much, did you?" she asked, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. William shook his head, reaching over to brush a strand of hair from her face. "I kept thinking about today," he admitted. "About what Dr. Martinez might tell us." They moved through their morning routine like two people walking through thick fog. Kate made coffee while William showered. Then they switched places. Breakfast in near silence, both of them picking at their food without really tasting it. The appointment wasn't until 2 in the afternoon, but the waiting felt unbearable. "I called in sick to work," William said as he cleared their breakfast. "Dishes. I didn't want to spend the morning pretending everything was normal when my mind would be here with you anyway." Kate nodded, understanding completely. She had done the same thing, asking her supervisor at the library to cover her shift. "Should we do until then?" Kate asked, looking around their small apartment as if seeing it for the first time. Everything felt different now, changed by the weight of uncertainty that had settled over their lives. William suggested they take a walk, thinking the fresh air might help calm their nerves. They walked hand in hand through their neighborhood. Past the corner store where they bought milk and bread, past the park where they had their first picnic together 5 years ago. The familiar sights that usually brought them comfort now felt distant and strange. Kate stopped walking suddenly, placing her hand on her chest and taking a deep breath. "Are you okay?" William asked, his voice filled with concern. Kate nodded, but William could see the fear in her eyes. "Just a little short of breath," she said. "It's probably just nerves." But William noticed how she had been doing this more often lately. These moments where she seemed to struggle to catch her breath. They sat on a bench in the park, watching children play on the swings while their parents chatted nearby. William wondered if he and Kate would ever have children of their own, if whatever was wrong with her heart would make that impossible. He pushed the thought away, not wanting to borrow trouble from a future that hadn't happened yet. "Do you remember when we first talked about getting married?" Kate asked suddenly. William smiled, remembering that day clearly. They had been sitting on this same bench, watching the sunset after a long day of hiking. Kate had been talking about her dreams for the future, and William had realized he wanted to be part of every single one of those dreams. "You said you wanted to grow old together," William said, taking her hand in his. "You said you wanted to sit on a porch somewhere when we were 80, still holding hands and still talking about everything and nothing." Kate's eyes filled with tears, and William immediately regretted bringing up the memory. "Still want that," Kate whispered. "I want all of it, William. I want our whole life together." William pulled her close, holding her tight against his chest. "We're going to have it," he said, his voice fierce with determination. "Whatever Dr. Martinez tells us today, we're going to figure it out together." By noon, they couldn't stand the waiting any longer. They drove to the medical center early, sitting in the parking lot and watching other patients come and go. William studied their faces, trying to guess what kind of news they had received. Some looked relieved, others looked worried, and a few looked like their world had just been turned upside down. "We should go in," Kate said when it was finally time. The medical center lobby was busy with people checking in for appointments, and the sound of muffled conversations filled the air. William held Kate's hand as they approached the reception desk. Giving their names to the woman behind the counter, the waiting room was exactly as William remembered it from 3 weeks ago. The same uncomfortable chairs, the same outdated magazines, the same smell of disinfectant that made his stomach turn. Kate sat beside him, her leg bouncing nervously while she stared at the floor. William wanted to say something comforting, but he couldn't find the right words. "Kate and William Morrison." A nurse called from the doorway. They stood up together, William's legs feeling unsteady beneath him. The nurse led them down a long hallway lined with examination rooms, their footsteps echoing on the polished floor. Dr. Martinez was waiting for them in his office, a thick file open on his desk. Was a kind man in his 50s with gentle eyes, and a warm smile that had always made Kate feel comfortable. But today, his expression was serious, and William felt his heart sink before the doctor even began to speak. "Please sit down," Dr. Martinez said, gesturing to the 2 chairs across from his desk. William and Kate sat close together, their hands intertwined. "I know this has been a difficult few weeks of waiting," the doctor continued. "I want to start by saying that while the situation is serious, there are treatment options available." William felt the room spin around him. Kate's grip on his hand tightened, and he could hear her breath catch in her throat. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Kate asked, her voice steady, despite the fear William could see in her eyes. Dr. Martinez opened the file and began explaining the test results. Kate had a condition called cardiomyopathy, which meant her heart muscle was weakened and couldn't pump blood effectively. The doctor used words like genetic and progressive in management that seemed to float in the air between them. "What does this mean for Kate's future?" William asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Martinez looked at them both with compassionate eyes. "With proper treatment and lifestyle changes, many people with this condition live full, normal lives," he said. "But it will require ongoing medical care and monitoring." Kate was quiet for a long moment, absorbing everything the doctor had told them. When she finally spoke, her voice was stronger than William had expected. "What do we need to do?" she asked. "What are the next steps?" William felt a surge of admiration for his wife, for her courage in the face of such frightening news. Dr. Martinez spent the next hour explaining treatment options, medications, and lifestyle changes. He scheduled follow-up appointments with specialists and gave them a stack of educational materials to read. When they finally left his office, both William and Kate felt overwhelmed by the amount of information they had received. They sat in their car in the parking lot for a long time, neither of them speaking. The rain had stopped, and afternoon sunlight was breaking through the clouds. William looked at Kate, seeing his wife in a completely new way. She was still the same person he had fallen in love with, but now she was also someone who would need extra care, someone whose health would always be a concern. "Are you okay?" Kate asked, noticing how quiet William had become. He realized she was worried about him, even though she was the one who had just received life-changing news. That was Kate, always thinking about others before herself. "I'm scared," William admitted. "But I'm also grateful that we know what we're dealing with now. We can make a plan. We can fight this together." Kate smiled, the first real smile he had seen from her in weeks. Together, she agreed, always together. The drive home from Dr. Martinez's office felt like the longest journey of their lives. William kept glancing at Kate in the passenger seat, watching her stare out the window at the passing trees and houses. She had been quiet since they left the medical center, and William could almost see the wheels turning in her mind as she processed everything they had learned when they finally pulled into their apartment parking lot. Kate turned to look at William with tears in her eyes. "I don't want this to change everything about our lives," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I don't want you to start treating me like I'm made of glass, like I might break at any moment." William turned off the engine and reached for her hand. "Kate, you're the strongest person I know," he said. "This diagnosis doesn't change that. But it does mean we need to be more careful, more aware of what your body needs." Kate nodded, wiping the tears from her cheeks with the back of her hand. They climbed the stairs to their apartment slowly, Kate pausing on the second landing to catch her breath. William wanted to help her, to carry her if necessary, but he remembered her words in the car. She needed to feel like she could still do things for herself, even if it took a little longer now. Inside their apartment, Kate went straight to the kitchen and began pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. "I'm making your favorite dinner," she announced, her voice forced cheerfulness. "Chicken and rice with those green beans you like." William watched her moving around the kitchen, her movements more careful than usual, but still determined. "Don't have to cook tonight," William said gently. "You could order pizza or Chinese food. You've had a long day." But Kate shook her head firmly. "I want to cook," she said. "I want to do something normal, something that makes me feel like myself again." William understood. He sat at the kitchen table, watching Kate work while they talked about ordinary things. She told him about a book she was reading, and he shared a funny story about something that happened at work the previous week. For a little while, they both managed to forget about the appointment and the diagnosis that would change their lives. But as the evening wore on, the weight of their new reality began to settle over them again. Kate's medication needed to be picked up from the pharmacy tomorrow. She had appointments with 2 different specialists scheduled for next week. There were dietary changes to consider and exercise restrictions to follow. "I keep thinking about all the things we won't be able to do anymore," Kate said as they sat on their couch after dinner. "Remember how we talked about hiking the Appalachian Trail next summer? Or taking that trip to Europe we've been saving for?" William could hear the sadness in her voice, and it broke his heart. "We'll still do those things," William said, moving closer to her on the couch. "Maybe we'll need to modify our plans a little bit, but we'll still have adventures together. Dr. Martinez said many people with your condition live completely normal lives." Kate leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "I'm scared about telling our families," Kate admitted. "Your parents are going to worry so much, and my mother is going to want to move in with us and take care of me like I'm a child again." William chuckled softly, knowing Kate was probably right about her mother's reaction. "We'll tell them when you're ready," William said. "There's no rush. We need time to process this ourselves first." Kate nodded, grateful that William understood her need to keep this private for a little while longer. The next few days fell into a new routine. William would wake up early to make sure Kate took her medication with breakfast. He would drive her to work at the library instead of letting her walk like she used to. Kate protested at first, saying she was perfectly capable of walking the 6 blocks to work. But William convinced her it was just until they figured out how the medication affected her energy levels. At work, Kate tried to act like everything was normal. She helped patrons find books, organized the children's reading corner, and processed returned materials just like she always had. But she found herself getting tired more easily, needing to sit down more often than before. Her coworkers began to notice that something was different. "Are you feeling all right, Kate?" asked Margaret, the head librarian who had become like a second mother to Kate over the past 3 years. You seem a bit off lately, like you're not quite yourself. Kate forced a smile, not ready to explain about her diagnosis yet. I'm just tired, Kate said. William and I have been staying up too late watching movies. Margaret didn't look convinced, but she didn't push the issue. Kate was grateful for the space to process her feelings without having to explain everything. To everyone, William was struggling too, though he tried to hide it from Kate. At the construction site, he found himself distracted and worried. His friend Jake noticed him checking his phone more often than usual, and William realized he was constantly thinking about Kate, wondering how she was feeling and whether she was pushing herself too hard. You've been different lately, Jake said during their lunch break. Everything okay at home? William wanted to tell his best friend about Kate's diagnosis, but he knew Kate wasn't ready for their personal business to become public knowledge yet. Just some stuff we're dealing with. William said vaguely. Nothing we can't handle. Jake nodded, understanding that William wasn't ready to talk about whatever was going on. That evening, William picked up Kate's medication from the pharmacy. The pharmacist explained how the pills should be taken and what side effects to watch. 4. William listened carefully, taking notes on a small piece of paper. He wanted to understand everything about Kate's treatment so he could help her manage it properly. When he got home, Kate was sitting at their kitchen table with a stack of books about heart conditions. She had checked them out from the library, determined to learn everything she could about her diagnosis. Did you know that cardiomyopathy affects about 1 in every 500 people? She said, looking up from one of the books. I didn't know that, William said, sitting down beside her. Else are you learning? Kate showed him charts and diagrams explaining what she had read about different types of treatment and lifestyle changes. William was amazed by her determination to understand her condition completely. He had a list of questions to ask Dr. Harrison next week, Kate said, referring to the cardiologist they would be seeing. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with and what our options are. William felt a surge of pride watching his wife take control of her health care with such determination. Later that night, as they were getting ready for bed, Kate stopped brushing her teeth and looked at William in the bathroom mirror. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I'm sorry that this is happening to us, that our lives have to change because of something wrong with my heart. William set down his toothbrush and turned to face her. Kate, you have nothing to apologize for, he said firmly. This isn't your fault, and it's not something you chose. We're in this together, and we'll figure it out together. Kate's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, knowing that William meant every word as they lay in bed that night. William listened to Kate's breathing, reassured by the steady rhythm that meant she was finally sleeping peacefully. He thought about all the changes they would need to make, all the challenges they would face. But he also thought about how much he loved her and how determined he was to make sure they got through this together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight she was safe in his arms, and that was enough. 2 weeks had passed since the appointment with Dr. Martinez, and William could see the weight of keeping their secret was wearing on both of them. Kate had become quieter at family dinners, carefully avoiding her mother's questions about when they might start having children. William watched his wife push food around her plate, giving short answers to questions that used to spark long conversations. The breaking point came on a Sunday afternoon when Kate's mother called with exciting news. I found the most beautiful baby blanket at the craft store, she said, her voice bubbling with enthusiasm. It's yellow and green, perfect for when you and William decide to give me a grandchild. Kate's hand trembled as she held the phone, and William could see tears forming in her eyes. Mom, I need to tell you something, Kate said suddenly, her voice shaking. William looked up from the newspaper he had been pretending to read. knowing this moment had been coming. Kate's mother immediately sensed the change in her daughter's tone. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked, all the excitement draining from her. Kate looked at William, and he nodded encouragingly. They had talked about this moment many times over the past 2 weeks, knowing they couldn't keep the secret forever. "I've been diagnosed with a heart condition," Kate said, the words coming out in a rush. "It's called cardiomyopathy, and it means my heart muscle is weakened." The silence on the other end of the phone stretched for what felt like hours. When Kate's mother finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "How serious is it? What does this mean? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" The questions came rapidly, each one filled with worry and hurt. William took the phone from Kate's trembling hands. "Mrs. Patterson, we wanted to understand what we were dealing with before we told anyone," he explained gently. "We've been to several doctors, and Kate is getting excellent care. She's going to be fine, but it will require ongoing treatment and some lifestyle changes." Kate's mother arrived at their apartment within an hour, her face streaked with tears and her arms full of groceries. "I brought soup," she said, as if food could somehow fix everything that was wrong. "Those herbal teas that are supposed to be good for the heart." Kate hugged her mother tightly, finally allowing herself to cry freely for the first time since the diagnosis. Over the next few hours, Kate explained everything to her mother. She showed her the educational materials from Dr. Martinez, the medication schedule, and the list of dietary changes she needed to make. Kate's mother listened carefully, asking questions and taking notes like she was studying for an important exam. "I want to come stay with you for a while," Kate's mother said. "It's just until we know how you're responding to the treatment." Kate and William exchanged glances. They had expected this reaction, but they also knew that Kate needed to maintain her independence as much as possible. "Mom, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not an invalid," Kate said gently. "William and I can handle this together. But I promise to call you every day and let you know how I'm feeling." Kate's mother looked like she wanted to argue, but something in her daughter's expression stopped her. The conversation with William's parents was equally difficult, but in a different way. His father, a practical man who had worked in manufacturing his entire life, immediately began researching the condition online. His mother, a retired nurse, asked detailed questions about Kate's symptoms and treatment plan that impressed even William with their medical accuracy. "The important thing is that you caught it early," William's mother said during their phone conversation. "Many heart conditions are very manageable these days with the right medication and lifestyle changes." Her calm, professional demeanor helped ease some of William's fears about his parents' reaction, but it was William's father who surprised him the most. 3 days after they told him about Kate's diagnosis, he showed up at their apartment with a thick folder of printed articles about cardiomyopathy. "I've been reading everything I can find," he said, sitting down at their kitchen table. "There's a lot of encouraging information about treatment outcomes." William felt a wave of gratitude toward his father, who had never been good with emotional conversations but was showing his love and support in the way he knew best. They spent 2 hours going through the research together, with William's father asking thoughtful questions about Kate's specific treatment plan. The hardest part of telling their families wasn't the initial conversations, but the changes that followed. Kate's mother called every morning and every evening, checking on how Kate was feeling and offering to bring groceries or clean their apartment. William's parents visited twice a week instead of once a month, always bringing flowers or Kate's favorite cookies. "I know they mean well," Kate said one evening as she hung up from her mother's daily check-in call. "But sometimes I feel like they're waiting for me to collapse or something, like they're watching me for signs that I'm getting worse." William understood exactly what she meant. The constant attention, while loving, was also exhausting. The situation at work became complicated too. Margaret, the head librarian, had finally confronted Kate about her obvious health concerns. Kate decided to be honest about her diagnosis, knowing that her supervisor needed to understand why she might need time off for medical appointments. "Of course, we'll accommodate whatever you need," Margaret said immediately. "Your health is the most important thing. Don't worry about the work. You can adjust your schedule or get temporary help if necessary." Kate was grateful for the understanding. but she also worried about being seen as unreliable or fragile by her. Co-workers. William faced similar challenges at the construction site. When he explained to his supervisor why he might need to leave early for medical appointments, the response was supportive but practical. "Family comes first," his boss said. "But we'll need to know in advance when you'll be out so we can plan the work schedules accordingly." The stress of managing everyone's concerns and expectations began to take its toll on both. William and Kate, they found themselves snapping at each other over small things, something that had rarely happened in their 8 years together. Kate felt guilty about the impact her diagnosis was having on William's work and social life. William felt helpless watching Kate struggle with fatigue and worry. One particularly difficult evening, after Kate's mother had called 3 times, and William's father had stopped by unexpectedly with more research articles, Kate broke down completely. "I can't handle everyone's panic," she sobbed. "I feel like I'm drowning in other people's fear about my condition." William held her close, feeling his own frustration and exhaustion bubbling to the surface. "Maybe we need to set some boundaries," he said quietly. "We can't manage our own feelings about this if we're constantly managing everyone else's reactions." 2. They spent that night talking about how to handle their family's well-meaning but overwhelming concern. They decided to schedule regular update calls instead of accepting random check-ins throughout the day. They would welcome visitors but ask for advance notice. Most importantly, they would be honest about what kind of support they needed, and when they needed space, the next morning, Kate called her mother with their new boundaries. "I love you, and I appreciate how much you care," she said. "But William and I need some space to adjust to this ourselves. I promise to call you every other day with updates, but I need you to trust that we can handle this together." It was a difficult conversation, but Kate's mother eventually understood. William had a similar talk with his parents, explaining that, while their research and concern were appreciated, constant visits and phone calls were adding stress rather than providing comfort. As the days passed, both families learned to step back while still offering support. Kate's mother sent care packages instead of making daily phone calls. William's parents scheduled their visits in advance and focused on normal conversation rather than constant medical updates. The adjustment wasn't easy for anyone, but it allowed William and Kate to begin processing their new reality without feeling overwhelmed by everyone else's emotions. 3 months had passed since Kate's diagnosis, and William could see that the constant worry and stress were taking their toll on both of them. Kate had good days and bad days with her medication, and the uncertainty of never knowing how she would feel from one day to the next was wearing on her spirit. William watched his wife trying so hard to stay positive, but he could see the sadness in her eyes that she thought she was hiding. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in late autumn. Kate had come home from the library exhausted after what should have been a normal day. She sat down at their kitchen table and began to cry. Not the quiet tears she had shed before, but deep, heartbroken sobs that shook her entire body. "I don't know if I can do this anymore," she said through her tears. "I'm so tired of being tired. I'm tired of everyone looking at me like I'm going to break. I'm tired of taking pills every morning and wondering if this is going to be my life forever." William knelt beside her chair, holding her hands while she cried. "I feel like I'm not the person you married anymore," Kate continued. "I can't do the things we used to do together. I get winded walking up the stairs. I fall asleep during movies we're watching. You deserve better than this." William felt his own heart breaking as he listened to the woman he loved more than anything in the world express such deep despair. That night, William made a decision. He couldn't fix Kate's heart condition, but he could remind her of all the reasons they were fighting so hard to build a life together. While Kate slept, he sat at their kitchen table with a notebook and pen, writing down every memory they had shared that had nothing to do with physical activities or perfect health. He wrote about the quiet Sunday mornings, when they would read the newspaper together in bed, taking turns reading interesting articles out loud. He wrote about how Kate would hum while she cooked dinner and how her face would light up when she talked about a book she had enjoyed. He wrote about their long conversations about everything and nothing, and how she could always make him laugh. Even when he had terrible days at work, William wrote until sunrise, filling pages with memories and reasons why their life together was beautiful, exactly as it was. When Kate woke up, she found him still sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by handwritten pages, and looking determined in a way she hadn't seen in months. What have you been doing all night?" she asked, her voice still hoarse from crying. William looked up at her with tired but hopeful eyes. "I've been planning something," he said, "something to remind us both of why we're in this together." Over the next week, William worked on his secret project every moment he could steal away from Kate's attention. He called in favors from friends, made arrangements he had never made before, and planned something that he hoped would show Kate how much their life together meant to him, heart condition and all. The following Friday evening, William told Kate he had a surprise for her. "Nothing too exciting," he assured her, seeing the worry in her eyes. "Just something I want to show you." He led her to their small backyard, where Kate usually liked to sit in the evenings and read. When William opened the back door, Kate gasped in amazement. The entire backyard had been transformed into something magical. String lights hung from every tree and fence post, creating a warm glow that made everything look like a fairy tale. Soft music was playing from speakers William had borrowed from his friend Jake. But it wasn't just the lights that took Kate's breath away. Arranged throughout the yard were photo displays showing pictures from their 8 years together. Pictures from their first date, their wedding day, quiet moments at home, vacations they had taken, and holidays they had celebrated. Each photo was mounted on an easel with a handwritten note from William explaining why that particular memory was precious to him. "William, what is all this?" Kate asked, her voice filled with wonder. William took her hand and led her to the first photo display. It was a picture of them at a bookstore cafe where they had spent their second date. Both of them reading different books, but sitting close together at the same small table. "This is the day I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you," William said, reading from the note he had written. "Not because we were doing anything exciting or adventurous, but because we could sit quietly together and both be completely happy." Kate's eyes filled with tears, but these were different tears than the ones she had cried the week before. They moved slowly through the backyard, stopping at each photo display while William read his memories aloud. There was a picture from their wedding day, but not the formal posed shots everyone had seen. This was a candid photo of them laughing together during the reception. Kate's head thrown back in genuine joy and William looking at her like she was the most amazing thing he had ever seen. "This is my favorite picture from our wedding," William read. "Not because you looked beautiful, although you did, but because this is the moment I realized that no matter what life brought us, we would always find reasons to laugh together." Kate squeezed his hand tighter, beginning to understand what William was trying to show her. There were photos from ordinary moments that William had somehow made extraordinary through his words. A picture of Kate reading in their living room while William worked on a crossword puzzle. A photo of them grocery shopping together, both of them making silly faces at the camera. A snapshot of Kate in their kitchen, wearing William's old college sweatshirt and stirring something on the stove. "These are the moments that make our life together beautiful," William said, when they reached the center of the yard, where a small table was set with candles and 2 chairs. "Not the big adventures or the perfect health or the things we thought we were supposed to want. It's just us being together, being happy in the small everyday moments." On the table was one final item, an envelope with Kate's name written in William's careful handwriting. Inside was a letter that William had spent 3 days writing and rewriting. Trying to find the right words to express everything he was feeling, Kate read the letter slowly, tears streaming down her face. In it, William wrote about how her diagnosis had actually made him love her more, not less. He wrote about how watching her face each day with courage and determination had shown him what real strength looked like. He promised her that whether she had good health days or bad health days, whether she could climb mountains or just climb the stairs to their apartment, he would love every single day they had together. "I don't need you to be the person you were before," William said as Kate finished reading. "I just need you to be you, exactly as you are right now, heart condition and all. Our life doesn't have to look like what we planned for it to be perfect." As they sat together, surrounded by the lights and the memories William had created, Kate felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not hope that her condition would magically disappear or that their lives would go back to the way they were before. but hoped that they could build something beautiful together, regardless of what challenges they faced. "I love you," Kate said, her voice strong and clear. "I'm ready to stop mourning the life we thought we would have and start celebrating the life we actually get to live together." William smiled, knowing that they had turned a corner together, that they were finally ready to move forward rather than just survive. That night, as they cleaned up the lights and photo displays together, William and Kate talked about their dreams. For the future, different dreams than the ones they had shared before Kate's diagnosis, but dreams that felt real and achievable and full of the quiet joy that had always been the foundation of their relationship.